Hi, welcome back to Crafting with Kimberly. I'm Kimberly Canelli, and today we're going to be crafting a coil basket. This basket is made out of rope and yarn. You can use any kind of rope. Rope comes in big containers like that. You can get the small, really thick nautical rope like that. Or what's even fun, to make this little basket, I used a hula skirt. This is basically raffia. And raffia is really expensive in small little packages, super expensive. But at the Dollar Tree, you can get those hula skirts for $1.25. Gives you a ton of materials. For this particular size basket, I only used 8 strands of the hula skirt. So it really makes a cute and fun basket. This is clothesline or rope covered in fabric. You can see it's pretty old. It's been around the block a few times, so that's why it's kind of fallen apart now, because I've used it for many demonstration purposes. But you can see there is the rope, and as you go along, you're covering the rope with strips of fabric, so then you don't see it. It's a little not as sturdy as the other baskets, and you can see, instead of on the red one, you can see the yarn that was used to tie it together. Basically, here I used the same strips of fabric, so it does blend in and it's kind of hard to see. So we're not going to be doing this one today or this one, but I am going to show you also how to do it, because once we do this basket and you figure it out, you'll be able to do any other kind. Now, these baskets, can be any size that you want. For this purpose, we're going to do just a little tiny one. These are great to be able to put your rings in, or, any little knickknacks that you have, paper clips, anything that you have sitting around. But the principle is the same. So it can be as big as you want to make it. You just keep coiling around and around and around. If you did not want to make a basket, you could just coil around in a circle, and it can make a hot plate, like a pot holder. It can be used as a bowl cozy. You can make it as big as like your casserole dish and put that in it to put it on your table. You can make a really big one and put it in your living room and hold magazines, papers, mail, things like that. So really, the sky is kind of the limit. You could even get really fancy and do little circles like this and make necklaces. So it's really whatever your ideas come up with to be able to make this. And it also doesn't have to be in just a perfect circular shape like this. You could angle it to go in this way and make more of like a tube, like a teardrop shape. You could have it rim out and have it be with a lip. Really anything you want. It's just a matter of how you stack the rope on top of each other and how you connect it. And I'm going to be showing that as we go along. So our materials today, basically rope. And for this particular basket, I'm using yarn. My rope that we're using today is this color, so I thought a pretty blue to contrast the colors would be nice, but it can be anything. I've also used this particular basket with the hula skirt raffia. I've used twine. And this is great twine that you can get at the Dollar Tree also. It comes in a set of 3 for 100 feet for $1.25. You can't go wrong with that. That's a great material to use. This is really nice string twine. So if you were wanting to do something like this basket, you could use, as I said, strips of material. Sheets are a great use for this. If you have a bunch of old sheets, you know how they get pilly after a while. Instead of throwing them out, cut them into strips. This is a great project. And if you make it big enough, you could even make it as a rug. They used to call them penny rugs. So that's a great use for it too. Or you can get ribbon And, you know, basically ribbon is fabric, and you can coil it around and do it, cover your rope as the same way. So lots of different uses for that. We also found for this particular rope that we used in class, once it was cut, because it's a braided rope, this end was the beginning end, and they had, I believe, taken like a lighter, some nylon rope can burn, and fuse itself to it. So I think that's what they did there, or just a very strong glue. So that end did not come apart. Whereas you can see this end really did, once we cut it and it's been hanging around for a while, it really started to unbraid and unfray. So I'm going to show how you can fix something like that. So let me turn the camera around so you can see a nice close view, and let's get started. As I said, this particular rope started to unbraid itself. I am not going to take the time to braid that because I'm going to start at this end, and this is going to be my base, and no one's really going to see it. So I happen to have a glue gun plugged in. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this glue gun, and I'm going to protect my fingertips with some glue tips. I'm going to just glue it and then start wrapping this around just so it's covered. It doesn't have to be anything special. It could be any kind of glue. I like hot glue because it goes quickly. Oop. So I'm just going to basically just try to wrap it around, cover the white part. I just don't want the white part to be seen so much. Put a little bit more here in the center. And again, I really don't care what it looks like because I just want it to not be fraying and not be covering. So I'm just kind of smoothing it around, and we will cover that. We're going to be folding it over and covering it. So if your rope that you have after you've cut it has a tendency to do this, this is a quick and easy fix that you can do. I'm going to put just a little bit of glue on the end there and just kind of smooth it while spinning it around. I'm using a silicone hot glue tray. These are great. If you don't have one of these, go ahead and just use some wax paper, but you definitely want something to protect your fingertips with. These are great. They also sell these at the Dollar Tree. Sometimes glue guns come with them, but you can see I've just, real technical term here, smooshed it together. And then I have that. So then once, if you cut your rope right away, you can either glue it immediately at the end so it doesn't get this far, or you can even take a piece of tape and just tape it around. Or if you're cutting and you're starting immediately, this has been sitting around for a while and that's why it started to come apart. So if you cut it immediately and fold it over, you won't have this problem. But that is a way to fix rope in case it ever does that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the end of my yarn that doesn't have the needle on it. I'm going to put it there on the bottom. I'm going to hold it. So I've got my end going this way and my end of my yarn going this way. And now I am going to just wind all around. I'm catching that little tail. I'm going to the end of my rope. So you can see I've just wound it around. I'm now going to take that and I'm going to fold it over. I need to have a center. So now I'm going to attach this part of the rope to this part of the rope. I'm working right here at the end again. Now I'm wrapping both pieces. I'm coiling around to catch that little end. Coiling all around, kind of going over what I've already done before. And I think that's nice and secure. You want to leave basically a small hole in the middle, because this hole is what we're going to be going up and down. So you just need enough to be able to go through that center. So you can see I folded it over, wrapped it all around, and it's now connected. Now I am going to bring the rest of this rope, going to bring it over. I'm going to start to coil now. Now you can decide, do you want a circle such as this, or do you want it to be oval or even square? It is how you coil your rope depends on the shape that you're going to get. I'm going to do a circle because that's the easiest. Circles and ovals are the easiest. So I'm just going to bring this rope over and I'm coiling it in a circle because I want to go a circle. If I wanted to do an oval shape, I could start like this and do more of an oval. I would like to do a circle, so I'm just pulling it a little tighter this way. I'm going to straighten out my yarn, and you can see yarn just wants to knot on itself. So it's coming in from the bottom. I've got it coiled. So I want to bring my yarn up. I want to go down through that hole that we made, that little circular hole. Pull it through. And pulling tight. So you can see I've brought my yarn up, down. I'm going to go down through the circle, going through the middle, pulling it through, and pulling it tight. I'm going to just move my circle a little bit, keep coiling, still coming up, going down that center, pulling it tight. I'm going to curve it again, bring it up, bring it around, go down through the middle, pulling it tight. I want to do this all the way around a few times because your base, you don't want spaces. And you want a good sturdy base because whatever you're putting into it, you don't want it to fall out of the hole. So I'm just going around and I'm spacing probably about 1/4 of an inch in between. Still going down through the center, bringing it up and going down through that center again. Pulling it through. Pulling it tight. Coming over. Bringing it up. Going through the center. Pulling my yarn through. Pulling it tight. The tighter you have the strings, the more sturdy the basket is. You can see I did not pull tightly on this basket, and it's very movable. You can see it just kind of moves all over into place and doesn't really want to hold its shape. Whereas this one has a much tighter weave to it. So the tighter you pull that, the tighter your basket will be. I'm going to do this where I've gone all the way around. I'm going to do one more right down through the center. All right, so now you can see I have my center. For my next coil, you can see how far away the center is. I already have one row of rope, whereas back here, it was just my center. Here now, I have my working rope, another row of what I've already coiled, and then the center. So for this one, I'm going to come up, and instead of going through the center, I'm going to go through that row. You can see the rope is here. This is all the way to the center. I'm not going to go all the way down there. I'm going to go to where my rope is. So I'm just going to put it through that. So I'm basically attaching this rope to this coil, not to the center anymore. Let's do that again. We'll roll it around. Going to bring it up. I'm going to come right above that stitch. I'm going to come to the side. You can decide now, as you see, how the stitches slant. You can either go straight up and down, you can slant them, or you could even go with this one. I just went straight up and down, and I tried to go every other. So I would put one here, and then the next row there and there, then the next row there. So it depends on what pattern you want. So I like the slanting pattern. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to go in front of the stitch right here. You can either go behind the stitch there, in front of the stitch there, or even go through those stitches and go right on top of it. I'm going to go right here to the side of that stitch on the second part of the coil, pulling tight, coiling around again. I see my stitch. I'm going to go right to the right of it, put my needle in, pull my string, pull it tight. And now I'm just going to keep circling. I'm going to bring it up. You can see there's my stitch. I'm going to go right to the side of it, right there. Pull it through, pull it tight. Spin it around again. There's my stitch, bringing it up, going to the right of that stitch, pulling it through, spinning it around. Now you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 stitches. If you want more rows to go through, you can just make your stitches closer together. It doesn't matter how closely you put the stitches. However, the closer you put the stitches to each other, so if I had gone here instead of here, it's a much tighter woven basket. But just to kind of keep it together, you really don't need one. I think that's a bit too far away to come way over here. So I'm going to add a new stitch here. So I'm going to bring it up. I don't want to go all the way over here, so I'm going to go right in the middle of these stitches. And you can see I'm going right through this coil, not all the way to the center, right to there. You can see that. So I'm going to go right in through there, right through the middle, pulling it tight, spinning around, bringing it up. Now I feel that stitch is close enough. So now I'm going to go right down, right next to that stitch, pulling, connecting. And I'm just going to keep coiling it, bringing it up, putting it next to that stitch, pulling it through, coiling it. Now you see, here's my center, here's a coiled row, here's a coiled row. So now instead of coming all the way down here, you're always going to the rope right underneath the rope you're coiling. So now I'm going to come here, bring it through that coil, go right next to that stitch. You can see I'm starting almost on my third row. Bringing it up, bringing it down. Sometimes you can bring it down, bring it to the front, hold your stitch, go through that row. And you can see how it is starting to take shape. I'm not going all the way down to this third one. I'm going down to the second one, pulling it tight. And you continue in this manner for however big you want your basket or your pot holder to be. Bringing it up, coming down. I'm going to keep going so I can show you also how to get more yarn, because I'm also almost out of my yarn. I think for here, look at how far this stitch is to this stitch. I think I'm going to add one in the middle here. So I'm not going to go all the way over to that stitch. I'm going to create a new stitch here, but I'm going in this second row. So there you go. So now you can see I've added another one, and you can keep adding them as far as you go. And then I'll go to the next one there. If you're not sure how big you want your basket, we made one about this size in class. I think I'm going to go one more row. I like this size. I like this little hand size. But you could also start to bring your rope around to say, do I want it this big? Is that going to be too tiny? Yes, I feel for what I want it for, that's a bit too tiny. So I'm going to go around a little bit more. So I'm going to bring my coil around, bring it up, around, go into that center and pull, coil around, up. I think I'm going to make a new row, a new stitch, because that seems like it's getting too far away. Bring it around, up, go right next to that other stitch. Coil around, up. Now, if you're going to make a pot holder or a coaster, you just keep going around in a circle for however wide you want it to be. As you can see now, I feel like that's too short to try to even do another stitch. I'm going to take my yarn. I'm going to go shoulder to fingertip, and about halfway. Cut it. The easiest way to do it is just tie a knot. You can get fancy and you can use a magic knot. I'm just going to do an overhand knot. I like 3 times. You know it's really secure. Pulling it tightly. I'm going to snip, not completely right next to the knot because I don't want it to fall apart. You could add a drop of glue to that if you wanted to. Clear nail polish. Now I just need to come back to my new end. Easiest way to thread a needle fold your yarn in half, and then push it through. If you didn't even have a needle, you could take Scotch tape or duct tape and wrap the end of your yarn to give it a stronger feel to be able to go up through. I just find a needle is just much easier to work with. Give myself a tail. Make sure I'm not twisted. Fix that. Because I want my yarn coming from underneath, my rope coming from the right. So I'm going to bring it around, bring it up. I think I'm going to add a new line, bring it through, pull it through, pull it tight, up, down, come right next to that stitch, pull it down through. Now I'm going to nestle. You can see my knot, it worked out perfectly. My knot is right in between those coils. That's a great way to hide it because now I don't see it on either side. If your knot was sticking out, you could still give yourself a little bit of slack and poke it in there. But if you can hide it between those two coils, then you don't even see that you've added more yarn. I'm going to go just a little bit more around before I start to go up. Probably one more right there. Now, I think that's a wide enough circle, a wide enough base to be able to use for the cord that I have. So when I've decided that this base is big enough, instead of, you can see if I were doing this flat on the table, you can see that I'm just coiling it around and around and around in a circle. But instead of, I want to give myself my height. So instead of going right next to each other, I'm going to lift it up just a little bit, ever so slightly. So instead of being straight across like this, I'm going to rest it up a little bit. So I'm going to bring that up for my first one. Go next to my other line. Pull it through. And I'm not going to pull that as tight because I want this to start to come up. Tight enough where it's not loosey-goosey, but up. So now I'm going to keep this one on top as well. Go through right next to my line. Pull it through. But instead of being straight down, you can see it's starting to lift up. So now by this time, I can go right on top of that other rope. So I'm going to lift it up. I'm going to go next to my next line, pull it through, keeping it up on top of that other rope now. Bringing it up through, still going through the row beneath, but I'm keeping my rope on top now. So you can see it gently, gradually lift it up. Up and around. Keeping it up instead of going flat. And now I'm just going to continue around, connecting the top rope to the next row below it, but instead of side by side, on the top. Up and around. You can change colors as you're going. You could use black. Since my rope is black, I could use black and you wouldn't even see the stitches. It's your design choice. So now you can see I've gone all the way around. I have my whole first level. So now I am definitely going to just keep going around top to bottom. Sometimes it might be easier to work on the side. Whatever's easiest for you of how you're seeing. Again, the thicker the rope, the higher it builds, the faster that it builds. But you're always going up, around, down through that second row. So these make great hot plates. Just continuing, coiling, keeping it lifted. And you can see how easy that is. Once you get the hang of it, the very beginning is the fussiest part. But once you get it, you can see how quickly, and you just kind of adjust as you go along. But I'm still turning, stacking, going right next to my other stitches, turning as I go, still doing it relatively tight. Because this rope is so thick, the yarn that I'm using does go pretty quickly, but really, trust me, it's better to just keep adding yarn and having a manageable piece of yarn to pull through so it doesn't get stuck in your rope, so it doesn't coil around. It really is much easier. And again, it's a design choice of how you want your basket to look. Do you want just a small little lip for like a casserole dish? Or just a flat, somewhat flat dish? And you can see I do need to add more yarn again. The measurements are not exact, as you can see. I'm just going to tie it together. 1, 2, 3. If you really wanted weight, I think with this one to show you, you don't have to cut it right away. If you really want to make sure that your yarn gets tucked in so you don't see the knot, I won't do that yet. Bringing it around, making sure I'm not tangled. So I'm bringing it up, still stacking up, down through that second row. Pulling it through. Bringing it up, going through the second row. All right, so now you can see here, I would just pull it just enough to make it catch. If I know it's going to catch there, now I can trim. pull through, poke those little ends in between, and now you don't see it at all. And I'm still coiling around. And you can see how it does want to knot if it's too long. This one I went even longer. So just take your time, undo your knots as you go. There we go. Pulling it tight, snugging it around, up and over. And then you can set it on your counter to make sure you're getting the shape that you want, pushing it around. This one, instead of going really straight up and down, I'm fanning it out a bit, which gives it a nice, because this is going to be like a flatter dish type. So you can see it's more on the edges. If I wanted it straight up and down, I would make sure it was up like this, but I wanted this to fan out. This you can see is going straight up and down. This I'm fanning out a bit more. But still following the same principles of everything. All right, as you can see, I'm getting close to the end of my cord that I've cut. I am going to keep this one in this shape. So I'm going to continue around here right till I get to the very edge. All right, so I'm right to my edge. This is the shape of the bowl that I like. I like it wider, coming out like this. You can see the sides. So now to finish this, I'm going to come down, go right next to that other stitch, do one more stitch. To finish, what you're going to do is you're going to go just like you did in the very beginning. You're going to take your string and just wrap all the way around this edge. Bring it down a little bit. So instead of going on top, so it just abruptly ends, I'm going to curve it downwards. Go right down next to my coil. I'm going to go actually down, just because of where I've ended up, I'm going to go down 3. Coiling it around. And then just kind of tucking it in a little bit there. And I'm going to do that a couple times. I'm going to come up. I'm going to come down, go to my second row again like I normally do. Come up, go to my second row like I do, and I'm staying in that same space. I'm just really making sure this is secure and down. So I'm just going through a couple of times. Just making sure it has a nice edge. And I'm connecting that through. If I had wanted to add more rope, I don't have any more of that particular rope. That was what we had in class. So say I had more of that rope. I would do the same thing. I would want to connect it down. I would finish it like that. I would take the new rope coiling it around again, going all around that edge, keeping it down. So I've wrapped it, keeping it down, and then I would start going through again, and then I would just continue building as I went. I would do it that way because this is such thick rope. If you have much thinner rope, you can put the two ends together. So this is your working end coming here. This would be the new rope coming here. I could stack them on top of each other, coil them together, and then continue around. So you'd have a little bit of a space there, but at least it's coiled together. That's the easiest way to do that. So I have my shape. I've coiled around. Let's just do another one for good measure. It's there. Now I'm just going to feed my needle back through. I'm going to do that again. There's really no wrong way or no right way to finish these. I just want to kind of hide my string. I think I'm going to come here to this line, bring it up through so I have a loop. I'm going to go back through, knot it. Do that again. Go up through. I have a loop. I'm putting my finger in there so I don't lose the loop. Go back through just so it catches and it makes a knot. And then coil around again for good measure. One more time. I'm going to pull it really tight, snip it, and then that will be hidden. That will be hidden in there. And you can see you just need to, move it around a little bit to get your shape because I was kind of holding it tightly. And there is your finished basket. You can see how easy that was. It makes a really pretty spiral pattern, neat jagged pattern. So you can see how easy that is. You can see how the center is very much a spiral, and it looks a little bit neater than the outside. It's a different kind of a pattern. So if I didn't like this pattern, but I really like this pattern and I want this on the outside, look what you can do. Flip it inside out. Straighten it around. get it to the shape that you want. This then does end up on the outside, but that's my back, so that's okay. You can see more of the spiral pattern. If your knots start to show, just tuck them in. Take the darning needle, push it in a little bit. So this has a neater, more spirally appearance on the outside. So really fun. And like I said, you can do whatever shapes and sizes that you want. That's how you do with the rope. If you wanted to do the basket with the raffia, you can purchase raffia, but as I said, buying a hula skirt, you get so much more material for your money. It's fabulous. So what you would do is you would just untie the hula skirt. I slide the pieces off. With the hula skirt, they've wrapped it. So each strand is 2. So what I do is I take the one strand, I bring my ends together, just to make my ends a little bit neater, and then come to here. So then I just kind of wrap it around each other. So I'm basically making rope out of that. Taking another one. You can just flip them off this way too, because there's a knot at the end of the hula skirt. So sometimes it's easier just to undo it this way. You have your 2 strands. You bring them together. Wrap them around a little. If you want it thicker, put your 4 strands together. So technically that's 4 strands. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the exact same method. Let's use some twine. Do my length of twine like I did before. Cut it, thread it. That's why the wide needles are great. The wide-eyed needles, they're so much easier to thread than something small. So now I have that threaded. I have 2 strands of that, but it's actually 4. I'm going to twist it a little bit around each other. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the end that does not have the needle on it. I'm going to put it here. I'm then going to wrap it around all the way to the end. Tighten that up. Fold it over. So I've just taken that, wrapped it, keeping that somewhat twisted. Folding it over, holding it, and then wrapping it around to connect it. And then I'm leaving my little hole there. So I'm bringing my yarn up from the back. I'm going down through that hole in the middle. Pulling it tight. So I'm going to keep my strands going that way. I'm going to keep twisting them around, going up through my center, pulling, bringing some more. Now this is when you're using this homemade, basically rope, the raffia. It's not as neat as the other because, you know, the strands want to come apart, but I like that look. But if you just gently keep twisting them as you go along. Now we're doing exactly the same thing that we did before. Coming up through that center, bringing some more raffia down. But in this case, I'm twisting as I go, coming down, up through the center, twisting, bringing more around, and I'm just going to keep doing that just like we did before. It's the exact same method. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to speed the camera up so you don't have to watch me make a whole nother basket, but I want to show you how we add more pieces. So I'm going to continue to do this the same way we did before. And I'll meet you back here. All right, so you can see that I've gotten to the end, kind of close to the end. So what I want to do is I want to take another set of raffia, again, 2 of the hula skirt strands, which makes 4, fold them in half, bring my edges together, so it's a little neater, twist them together a little bit, like we did before. So basically what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have one set of ends coming this way and another set of ends going that way. And I want to put my ends together, twisting them up. You definitely want a good 2-inch to 3-inch overlap, just to really make sure that they're connected and they're tight together. So you can see that I've just kind of rolled them together. And I'm going to treat it as one strand, even though they are rolled together. And then I am just going to continue to go around, making sure I'm catching all the ends, going through my row below, just rolling them around. If you wanted to, you could also roll your twine around it a little bit to connect them, but that's how you go, and you basically just keep going around and around and around. And again, I like the look of how you can kind of see them around, but if you don't like the little edges like this sticking out, then definitely put your edges together and roll your twine around it to make sure that it's caught. This is also how, if you wanted just a thread, you didn't want your rope to show at all, you wanted to do it with yarn, you can also do the same principle, is wrapping all the way around, completely covering, doing it for about 1/4 inch, and then going up through your stitch like we did before, connecting it in, catching my end there, connecting it in, doing your stitch, coming back, and then wrapping around again. So you would be completely covering either your rope or your twine. You're still connecting it in like we did before, but each time we go, you would keep wrapping around. So then you would see, you would have just a completely covered rope. It's the same way as if you were wrapping your rope with fabric. You could take your fabric or your ribbon, cover it, wrap it around. I personally, to start it, I would glue it just to give yourself a really good connection there. And wrapping around, this is a little bit more fiddly to do. You would then fold it over like you did before, wrapping with your yarn, your string, or your fabric, doing whatever, continuing to coil around. But as you're coiling around, you're wrapping your rope first. So you would wrap it, coil it, then connect it. So you can see it's a little bit fussier, but that gives you that look. So you can see, and then you end the same way, bring it down, tuck it in. Like I said, I've used this a lot of times, so that's why it's falling apart. Same thing, you just tie your things together. You don't want it to be seen. You tuck your little edges in. So that is how you make a coiled basket. Again, the uses, you could turn it into a rug, a pot holder, a dish holder, bigger baskets, you know, just a flat sheet to make coasters, whatever you want to do. But it's a fun little project. It's a great way to use up some of your yarn or your fabric that you have lying around the house. Well, I hope you had fun. Again, this is Kimberly Keneally for Crafting with Kimberly. See you next time.